So this engine has a rough idle, but it also has a noise. It's like a popping noise. It sounds kind of like a popcorn machine. When it just starts popping that corn, it goes pop, pop about once every second or so, and I can hear it right here at the top of the engine. It's really loud and it's rhythmic, so it seems like if it's coming from a certain cylinder, maybe just that one cylinder. So I'm going to start it up. You can take a listen. Now go into the comment section and guess what you think it is after you hear it. Sounds pretty cool. It's got a little bit of a rough idle, but what you hear is that, the popping noise. Sounds like popcorn popping, but just once in a while. I'm curious to hear what you think this sound is. I've got my own suspicions, but I can't be sure until I start testing, so that's what I'm going to do next. But it sounds to me like sort of a hollowy, echoey sound, like that pop is happening maybe in the intake manifold. It's something I can hear pretty loud, and that intake manifold is plastic, so that would definitely translate that sound pretty well. Let's go ahead and hook up. I don't have a pressure transducer, but what I do have is a pressure gauge. So let's go ahead and hook that up. I'm gonna go right here into, I'm gonna go right there into the vacuum line. I'll show you that here in a second. I'm gonna hook that up and we're gonna start it again and run it to see if we get a pressure change inside the intake manifold. Okay, this is 0 here, so if it goes counterclockwise, you're in vacuum, which is what you should see in an intake manifold. And if it goes clockwise, you're into pressure. So let's see what happens. See it ticking up? The louder, the louder the pop goes, the more pressure we get inside the intake. That's pretty crazy. Now that you've seen and heard the symptoms of this engine, let me go ahead and turn the key on and we'll get this thing fired up here. Let's go to the PCM. We're going to go directly to special functions here. Now what I want to, there it is too. Check this out, power balance. Can you see that? That's got a power balance test. Now this is a dealership level test that Ford has specifically for them to test the engine to see what kind of mechanical health it's in. And we're gonna do it here. I hope you can hear the popping. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cylinders, and this is going to be the power that each cylinder is contributing to the entire engine's performance. This little guy right here is down on power. This is cylinder number 3. But check this one out, see that? Every time I hear a pop, this comes down and it loses power. So cylinder number 3 is always down on power. There's something going on with that cylinder. Don't know, it could be an ignition problem or compression or something else. But this, watch that pop. Listen to the pop and watch that power come down each time it pops. All right, well that's a pretty interesting problem. Now I'm so happy I've got a very powerful tool in this King Bolin to help us zero in, to help us get us over the target. But I'm starting to suspect a compression issue, perhaps a valve spring, something in the cylinder head that's going to get it low on power, but for some reason only sometimes. So let's go ahead and do this. We've got cylinder number 3. We've got a problem with that, but we've also got this 6 with the intermittent problem. So what I want to do is a relative compression test. Now, there's plenty of ways to do that, but I can see right here on the tool that there's a relative compression test built right in. So this is going to be test number 2 that we can do right here from the driver's seat. So let me get that started. I'll show you what that looks like. Let's go ahead and turn the key on. And there it goes. Now it's telling me to crank. Now listen to the cranking and we'll see what it sounds like, and then we'll also see on screen what it's doing. What I want you to notice is the rhythm of that cranking sound. You can hear the engine kind of speeds up at a point and then slows back down. I think that's going to be cylinder number 6, but the tool is going to tell us for sure. All right, we got our results. Let's have a look. Okay, now cylinder number 3, it says normal. So as far as relative compression goes, that cylinder is looking good, especially when you compare it to cylinder number 1. Number 7 looks okay. Number 2, and there's number 6. We've got a 23% deviation between this and cylinder number 1, and really all the rest of the cylinders also. Cranking RPM is right there, but we've got a mechanical issue, I think, with cylinder number 6. Now, as far as number 3 goes, why did it have that misfire? Probably a spark plug or some other fuel related something, not mechanical. Number 6, that's mechanical. Okay, so I'm not sure if the computer is correct about which cylinder we're having a problem with. So what I've gone ahead and done here, right there, I'm tapped into cylinder number 1. That's the ignition there. So I'm going to get a scope capture on that for reference as to where the engine's at. And then I've got an amp clamp on the battery. So we're going to do a relative compression test the old-fashioned way with a scope here. So let me go ahead and start recording now, and we'll go ahead and crank her up here. All right. We can see what we ended up with. That's a pretty cool capture. You can see we definitely have a compression issue, but we need to find out where that's at. So let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay, ignition on cylinder 1, and we got 3, 7, 2, 6, and then look at 5 here. Starter's working like twice as hard to push that piston up on number 5, then 4, 8 goes back down. Number 1 again is normal. All right. This is after a couple hours of screwing around, looking at waveforms and trying to figure out what in the heck is going on. Why is the number 5 cylinder pushing so hard on the relative compression test when number 6, the one right before it, isn't low on compression? Didn't make sense, so I pulled the valve covers, and what I found makes perfect sense, but I couldn't figure it out without seeing it in person. Let me show you what's going on. This is the driver's side head. It's got the valve cover off. Everything looks good. The camshaft looks good. Nothing is out of place. I don't see any big damage. Nothing like that. It's not even sludged up or anything. It looks pretty good. This right here, of course, is number 6. And it's number 5. Number 5 is the one on relative compression the starter was pushing too hard, but number 6 had perfect compression, or at least it was fine for this engine. Now, let's go over to the passenger side. Timing chain looks fine. Cylinder number 1 looks fine. Cylinder number 2, that's all right. There's cylinder number 3. You notice something? Look real hard and look at the exhaust valve. This makes perfect sense. This is the exhaust cam lobe for cylinder number 3. See how scored up it is? And I've got these ridges here. It's all damaged. It's pretty nasty. And if you see here, this little stud right there, that's missing something. And I found it down, where is it? There it is. There you go. This is the roller follower, and see that? That's the roller that shouldn't be wiggling around like that. That is completely just destroyed. So this thing was rolling on the camshaft, and eventually this thing got loose and just wiggled right out, ended up down here in the head somewhere, and now the exhaust valve is not opening up. There's only one exhaust valve. It's got two intakes, one exhaust. Exhaust isn't opening up on this cylinder, so it's backfeeding back into the intake. All that combustion gas or compression, whatever is in there, goes right back in to the intake here, and that's where you're hearing the pop. That pop is coming from number 3. Very interesting problem. Now, I've got the firing order under here. It's 1-3, so this is the one right after cylinder 1. But what's the companion cylinder to number 3? Number 5. So you got 3, then 1, 2, 3, bang, 4, number 5. So number 3 and number 5 are coming up at the same time. And with 3 not exhausting the way it should, the starter is pushing 2 compression cycles, one on 3 and one on 5, and it's working twice as hard. And we saw that in the ignition in the waveform here. There's that double compression hump right there. It's pushing so hard compared to the rest of the cylinders. Super crazy. All right, we got it. We've got the valve covers back on. Camshaft is in there, rocker arm, lifter, that's all done. I also did the spark plugs. Broke number 8 back here. That thing broke, so I had to get an extractor to pull that out, and that was kind of an ordeal. But I've got new spark plugs in there. The ones that I took out were worn out, so I just didn't want to keep those. So we're ready to go. We're ready to fire this thing up, see what it sounds like. I'm pretty excited. Let's go ahead and fire it up and see what happens. Get that fuel pump to prime up. And here we go, fire and hold. Not bad. No more misfire. I'll go ahead and hook it up to the scan tool and we can watch the cylinder contribution that we saw before, but now I think we got this thing done. Okay, let's go ahead and start the car. Oh yeah, look at that. Cold start and it looks great already. So for the most part, we're just flat right across, and that is so good. I'm so happy to see that. Not bad for a higher mileage engine that's got over 100,000 miles, about 125 or so. So happy. Not gonna lie, this Diag was a head scratcher for me for a while, but we got through it. The repair was pretty easy. I think the valve covers were the worst part of it. Just getting the valve covers off and then putting them back on with the new gasket. Kind of rough getting to some of those bolts, but the camshaft and the rocker and all that stuff, that was pretty easy to do. Didn't take very long, so I'm glad we got it done. This thing, man, I can't believe how much better this thing runs. It's like a completely different car. So now it's time to get this thing looking better, and it's gonna be ready to go. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'll post more videos on it in the future. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.